You know what time it is.
Showtime.
We're born to bounce.
Feel the bass.
I tell ya.
Going to bounce.
Get ready. It's showtime.
What is up, everybody? I am Brent Allen, your host, joined as always by my man, Ren, the boss, Daxed. Ren, we are the PewterCast, and we are here not talking about the Buccaneers, at least not tonight. We are here to talk about the Apollos. This is our brand new podcast, Showtime with the Apollos, and this is going to be our instant cast for Game 1, the Orlando Apollos taking on the Atlanta Legends. Ren, how the hell you doing, buddy?
I'm good. Exciting. Isn't this exciting?
It is. Brand new, brand new football. This is a whole new area that you and I are venturing into. With the Buccaneers, and it was occurring to me even while I was watching this game, with the Buccaneers, we know everybody on the team. I would venture to say you and I probably, if you just said, okay, Ren, 53 players on the Buccaneers roster, go, you probably hit 50 of them, 49. I mean, you might miss like one or two, kind of at the end.
I could get all 53.
I'm pretty sure I could. I just, there might be that, oh, crap, who's that one I'm forgetting? Like, it'd be that kind of, it's on the tip of my tongue, and then you'd be pissed at yourself if you forgot it. We don't know those guys with the Apollos.
No.
Like, we don't know these guys. We don't know all of their histories. We don't know their storylines. We don't know necessarily where they came from without having to look it up. There's no running thread as we jump into this. There's no history. History is being made, and it's a new way to talk about football, and it's new football.
And it's what football?
And it's new football.
I thought you said do football. It's do football.
Yes, today's show is brought to you by Mountain Dew. They'll be sending us a check later on. Do football. Maybe not. Mountain Dew, if you want to send us a check, we'll take it.
Yeah, I think, the big thing for the league, at least for it sticking around, we talked a little bit about before, is the TV contract.
Sure.
They got 3 years with CBS and the NFL Network, and they're going out of their way, and we're talking about the Alliance, the AAF, they're going out of the way to say that, hey, we're not competing with the National Football League.
Mm-hmm.
What we're doing is we're a compliment for guys that, are down at the bottom of the roster. Some of those guys that you said I might forget, as you're naming off the 53, as that bottom of the roster turns over, you see it every year, during the season. That last sort of like 5-6 spots is constantly turning over on the 53-man roster. And these are the type of players that are there. I mean, right now, the Arizona Hotshots and the Salt Lake City Stallions are playing.
Right.
And there's 3 ex-Buccaneer wide receivers in this game. There's Josh Huff, Freddie Martino, and Kenny Bell.
Wow. And Freddie Martino is the guy who's gotten quite a bit of play with the Buccaneers, like over the years, for a bottom of the roster kind of guy, a guy who's been up and down on the practice squad. He's no slouch, to say the least.
No, Jason Light liked him.
Yeah.
And Dirk Cutter liked him because he had him in Atlanta, and Jason Light, liked his size and liked his athleticism. It's for those players that don't get enough reps in practice to be able to move up the depth chart. It's for those players that don't get, maybe don't get the ball thrown to them enough, or the balls run their way, or, those guys that sort of get the short end of the stick, to put some film out there. You got 10 weeks at least. You make their championship game, it's going to be 12 weeks worth of film. I've heard that every single NFL team when they had their preseason, they all showed up in San Antonio and played one game, in full uniform. They called that their preseason or their scrimmage. Every single NFL team showed up there, and it's perfectly set up. Like, it starts the week after the Super Bowl, and it finishes right before the draft. So so anytime they're allowed to anytime a team wants them, because they're not going to really want them at that 10-12 week window.
They shouldn't. And we were talking about that. So to set this up, just so you guys know, one of the special things about getting to cover the Apollos this season, Ren and I decided we were talking about it, Ren, during the year. That hey, this Apollos thing is coming up. What if we were to start a podcast? And kind of went back and forth on it, and we went through the process, and we actually got credentialed as media. And I was able to go out to this past game and represent us out there as credentialed media. So got to be in the press box, got to be in all the press conferences, got to walk through the locker room. I was doing some other stuff while a lot of those things happen simultaneously, so you don't get to do them all.
Right.
But, kind of got to walk through the locker room and say hi to some of the guys and just see what was happening. And at the time, there wasn't much. So I moved on. But anyway, so if you guys hear some of these stories, just know that that's where this is coming from. And, Ren, I can't wait for when you get to join me or you get to go and we get to hear about your experience out there. But for this week, it was me. What were we talking about? Why did I tell you that story?
Because you want to tell me how awesome the bounce house was?
The bounce house was cool. Yes, this is why. Because even in the press conferences, Jeff Fisher was there. Yes, that Jeff Fisher, former Rams coach. He was there. And Jeff Fisher with the league is the guy who is like head of the rules committee and actually deciding who plays and how to play and all those kinds of things. So he came in and talked to the press corps right after the game. And the phrase that they kept using, and the phrase that the Alliance as a whole keeps using, is they're a complementary league to the NFL. They're not in competition. They're a complementary league. They're very, very aware that all of these guys, and they exist for the purpose of helping to elevate these guys back to the NFL. That was the whole reason that this league exists, was to help these guys that they got, to give them a second look. As you said earlier, maybe they didn't get enough reps through camp to be able to make a team. Maybe they got injured at the wrong time. And some of them even said maybe they just had a falling out with a coach and they got cut. And they weren't able to get enough film out there. This is for those guys to have that second shot, or at least to be able to put more game film on. Now, that said, to what you're saying, of the NFL can come call these guys at any time. And from my understanding, from the conversations that I was having yesterday, that includes mid-game. Like if an NFL team came and said, we want this guy, they can pull him off the field of the game. And they just go with their backup. Now, why would a team do that? Kind of what you were saying. Like, no team's going to want them right now unless, I guess, they wanted to protect them from injury. But,
right.
I mean, this is the game that the NFL has to play with anybody. I mean, injury is part of the game, right? So what would you rather do? Protect them from injury or let them go get 10, 12 games of experience?
I guess it depends on what kind of plans you have for that player.
Yeah.
If you're just thinking, hey, he'd be a great camp invite, maybe he can catch on at the bottom. I would think as a GM of my NFL football team, I would want him to get as many reps as possible and get more film out there for me to look at. Because if I'm afraid that he's going to get injured and it's going to ruin my grand scheme of plans, then I'm not looking at the bottom of my roster. I'm looking at a guy that's going to, play significant minutes and get some significant time on my team. Now, if I'm looking at the Alliance and I'm looking at a guy who's out there playing and I think he's going to get some significant time or minutes, my roster's not really very good.
Right.
So the rarity of someone getting pulled out in the first quarter at halftime because they get the call up to, the Raiders is probably going to be
it's going to be nil.
Extreme.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but there, as you do, you just say, well, could they do it if they wanted to? And the answer that we kept getting back was, yeah, if they wanted to. I mean, why would you? But I guess they could. I mean, you'd have to have the GM there with a contract in his hand, I think, to grab them between plays or something. But these guys do all have the outs. The NFL can come calling at any time. They can sign back with the team at any time. And there's even this little bit of like, and we saw it actually with the Apollos quarterback, Garrett Gilbert.
Mm-hmm.
So double G. I keep wanting to call him Gilkey. Didn't
Okay.
we had a Garrett Gilkey on our team? Didn't we?
He was the guy
He was an offensive lineman, right?
that helped convince Jensen to come to
That's right. Okay.
come to Tampa to
Right.
free agent because they've been childhood friends or something.
Okay, that's the name that I keep wanting to say.
You know, say
But,
Garrett Gilkey.
He was a guy that they had drafted. He was their quarterback with the Apollos, and then he got called up to the Panthers at the end of the season. Actually, got some playing time, and then got cut again and came back to the Apollos. So there's a little bit of this. They can kind of yo-yo a little bit,
Right.
You know,
And the first overall draft pick, because they only had a quarterback draft.
right.
You know, if you've listened to the previous show and if you've watched any of the games, you've heard how each team is sort of regionally. They pick their roster regionally by colleges or the last football team they played for. The Apollos, besides the Bucs and Dolphins, also have the Giants and the Jets, and then they have a CFL team, which I believe is the BC Lions.
Well, I can tell you this. The CFL team that was represented at the game yesterday was the Winnipeg Blue Bombers.
That is not. Maybe
It
that
may
was,
not be their CFL team. I'm just saying that's the guy who that's the team that had a scout there. Was the Blue Bombers.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
I
there
know
you go.
because I sat next to him.
Maybe he was scouting, or maybe he was who'd we play? Oh, the Legends. Maybe the Legends. That's their CFL team is the Blue Bombers.
Maybe. Well, this particular scout, he lives in Florida. He scouts the Florida guys.
Oh,
So
okay.
it makes sense that would be why he was there. But anyway, he was the scout that I happen to know was there. So it may not be necessarily their team, but whatever. Yeah, it's these guys. It's an interesting deal, and
There's also a player here we haven't talked about. It's sort of the guy that's either hanging on or just sort of getting a paycheck, like such as the Arizona Hotshots kicker Nick Foles. We know a little bit about him, but he's been 10 years in the league, and I believe what I heard tonight was it's a 3-year contract. We know, but I heard it was for $250,000
over the course of the 3 years, non-guaranteed. Right. And from what I also understand, by the way, with that's true for every player in the league.
Yeah. There's no quarterback tier, left tackle tier. So $75,000 to kick and play in 10 games a year isn't to have a job for 12 weeks at max really isn't a terrible paycheck. Yeah. You know, there was another Arizona hotshot, a guy named Sterling Moore, who's played like 8 years in the league.
Who was a former Buccaneer.
Yeah, and he's a cornerback.
Yeah.
So is he just trying to stay in shape and make some money on the side? Or is it like, hey, I just really love to play football. I can play in this league for as long as I want. And if I get a call up, okay, but I'm just really here to sort of, hang out with, still play football.
Right.
Right. You know what I mean?
Right. So that's who we got. That's who we're talking about. And guys, listen, this is the InstantCast. We're going to be going through that. I've got some notes that I certainly made from the game. I've got some things to share with you guys. Was able to be in the press conferences. Maybe we'll get to talk about that, Ren. But it's not just us. Ren, you got to watch the game at home, I believe. Or I'm not sure where you were, but you got to watch the game. But also, I want to say hello to those of you who are joining us live. This is our InstantCast. We opened up our InstantCast platform. So hello to everybody over in YouTube land. Hello to everyone over in Mixlr. And tonight, the phone line will be open. If you guys watch the game and you got thoughts and you want to call in and talk about the game, do it. I don't know who's actually going to do it. This is so new territory for us. We'll see what happens. Usually InstantCast is filled up with calls, and that becomes almost the entire show. I'm not sure we're not sure how it's going to go with the Apollos. So it'll be open if you guys want to call in. In fact, Ren, I'm going to go ahead and open up that line just to let people know if they want to call in, they can. That number is it's 864-729-BUCS. It's 864-729-2827. This is still a Buccaneers podcast overall, guys. We're still the PewterCast, but the show is Showtime with the Apollos, and we're talking about the Apollos now. With that said, Ren, you guys listening out there, you want to call in, do it, interrupt us. We'll talk about whatever you guys want to talk about. But until then, Ren, you and I got some football to talk about, buddy.
Okay.
All right. So a couple of things. First of all, you got to watch the game. Let me go ahead and get your overall thoughts on the game, watching it at home. What'd you think of A, AAF football. Oh, well, we'll talk about that here in just a moment. Already got a
I'm
caller.
shocked we have a call.
I am too. Shocking us with the phone call. Who do we got here tonight?
It's John. What's up, boys?
What's up, John?
Hey, John.
Not much. First off, I know this is kind of the whole brand new league and all this, and I just got to say one thing. If the Buccaneers played half as good as they did right there, we might actually do something.
Are you trying to say
that
if
was
the Buccaneers played half as good as the Apollos?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just...
All right. You understand the
I don't know,
level of competition is
trying
completely
to catch
different,
up and
though, right,
watching a
John?
little bit of all of them, but, I'm still going to go ahead and pick my team is for Orlando, and obviously going to pick Tampa once XFL starts, but this was really interesting, and if the NFL could just adapt to these rules, I think if they don't, then it might seem a little bit more competitive, but I don't know.
So you like the
overall,
rules
like
changes,
this.
John? You like the changes in rules to the AAF?
Yeah, I think they should.
Yeah,
NFL
which
should at least
ones?
try to adapt somehow to the way that they got this set up.
Which one specifically did you like?
I'm sorry, what?
Which one specifically did you like?
Like the whole no kicking on the kickoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Just automatically put it at the 25. I like their overtime rules a little bit better. Going for it for the 2-point conversion deal. That's really what that could really help a lot too. But the thing I really like the most about it is the whole no penalties thing. Especially with that game that was played with San Antonio last night.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to actually watch football like that, and it kind of brings back old memories like from when you had like Ronnie Lott and John Lynch and all those hard-hitting defensive backs and stuff playing. It just, to me, it seemed like that kind of football is kind of what everybody's been missing.
Yeah, John, that was a real interesting thing because one of the things that the Alliance really prides itself on is player safety. Now, they do that for several reasons. One of those reasons being none of these guys want to get hurt and end their chance to get back to the NFL. Another reason is it's just the right thing to do. You concern yourself with the players. This is a league. Jeff Fisher, I quote, says, "We are first and foremost about the players in the Alliance." And so they're really focused on player safety as a point that they eliminated some of the most dangerous plays. However, that being said, you're absolutely right about the officiating. Now, they still had their flags. They still had penalties. They still blew their whistle. But it wasn't for all the nitpicky little things that we see in the NFL.
Yeah.
And the officials let the guys play, which was nice.
That's the biggest thing that I liked. Because, you don't see, somebody getting hit or somebody, I know we're trying to do away with the whole helmet-to-helmet rules. Yeah, player safety, that's good. But, for instance, in the AFC Championship game where the defensive tackle or defensive end from Kansas City barely even touched Brady and it was a penalty. Mm-hmm. It's those bullshit kind of calls like that it's annoying everybody. And it seems like once Roger Goodell took over the NFL as commissioner, that's when it started. The NFL decided it got soft. Because when Paul Tagliabue was there, that's when we didn't have these issues. And also the other thing that I was looking at and I watched the NFL, the quarterback draft. I watched a little bit of it, over the last couple of weeks, trying to get established on how all this is, and then did the same thing, trying to find out all I could about what's going to happen with Vince McMahon when he does the XFL, and trying to understand both of these leagues. Like you said, it's a complementary league. And one thing that stood out to me in the interview on that quarterback draft, they said that there was over 600 years of NFL experience between the general managers, coaches, all the player personnel, all the ownerships, the whole 9 yards, all the business side of it. And it seems like they've taken all the imperfections from the NFL and tried to make it to where these people or these players get second chances. They don't. They said that in the percentile they wanted at least 40 to 50% of their entire active rosters to have that kind of a turnover where half of the league gets sent to the NFL. So that's a really good thing for most of these players who's really looking and trying to get second chances by NFL teams.
Yeah, I would honestly think that just based on what I saw, I would not find it hard to believe that we could see 40 to 50% of these rosters at least wind up in camp. Now, will they make a 53-man roster at the end of camp? That's a different question. In fact, spoiler alert, when I take a look around just the Apollos and who I saw last night after one game in real-time game speed, I haven't had a chance to go back and watch the game yet. There's 3, maybe 4 players that I could see winding up on a 53-man roster, just based off this one game. Now we'll see as the season goes on, but that's what the league is here for. It's for the players. They know who they are. That's what I like about the Alliance. They know who they are. They're not trying to pretend to be something different or something bigger than what they really are. They are a developmental league, feeding back into the NFL. So that's their idea. That's their point.
Yeah, and when I heard about, this is a complimentary league, I started looking up research on YouTube and found out there was another league called the UFL, and it was around from 2009 to 2012. And, it started to do good. And then, you had the old version of the XFL back in the early 2000s. Mm-hmm. You had all of these different leagues that were trying to either compete with the NFL or things of that nature. And then just like really looking at the core of this league, it's like they're trying to associate themselves with the NFL, trying to work with the NFL, and trying to be like their minor league system, if it were. They're trying to give these players that chance, and I just, if they keep doing things the way they are right now, I think this is actually going to be one of those leagues that sticks around for years. Instead of, hey, let's develop a brand new football league, and then it fizzles out after 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, I think the Alliance, they're on their way. They're doing the right things to make that happen. The people that they have in place are the right people. And these are all NFL people or former NFL people, high position people, very respected people from the NFL. So they have a good relationship. And, what you're talking about there reminds me, I was talking to the guy from the CFL that I mentioned earlier in the show. He told me that when you sign with the CFL, Ren, I don't know if you knew this, when you sign with the CFL, when you're done with the CFL, you are not allowed to go play in the NFL for 2 years. They block you from playing in the NFL for 2 years. It's part of your contract. So the what? CFL is not, they really are not trying to allow their players to escape back to the NFL. They're really trying to lock them down. And, it's fortunately for them, CFL is, the people up in Canada love it. It's their sport. It really is their sport. So they're not going anywhere, but they're also, they're trying to really lock those players out in kind of non-compete clauses.
I did not know that. And I'm not if you wouldn't have heard that from a scout from the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, I would say that you don't know what you're talking about. I find that extremely hard to believe, especially since, there is a scout on every NFL team, and I know there's one for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers because I asked Scott Smith and Casey the question, I think 2 years ago, who covers the CFL? Who's the guy that scouts the CFL in case? Because we had a couple years ago, remember that quarterback LaFleur?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a CF. He was a camp body. Mm-hmm. He was a camp arm, but he was a CFL guy. So, that's interesting. But if any about all those leagues you talked about, you didn't mention the USFL, but there was the UFL and of course XFL. But these guys, the Alliance, are sponsored. They're in bed with the NFL. I was watching the Hot Shots Stallions game on the NFL Network. They've got I'm gonna say the full backing, And like Brent said, it's a developmental league. Let's call it what it is. You want to call it AAA or a minor league. They don't like those words. They call it complementary league. But that's what it is. It's a developmental league. And the NFL has needed one for a decade. And now they have it. But the best part is they don't have to pay for it. And the Alliance is extremely happy just making their TV money, making their owners money, giving more coaches jobs, more video people jobs, more announcers jobs, scouts jobs, whatever you want to call it. Like, there's all these more football jobs to develop everything everywhere. And like I said, and now they have it, and all they got to do is give the AFL some money for the TV contract, and it's all taken care of for them. And like Brent said, it's run by highly respected NFL minds that know what they're doing. It's a perfect marriage.
It really is. It really is.
Yeah,
and I hope they stick around. So, all right, hey John, I'm going to go ahead and jump you off here, and I'm going to let some other people call in. I think I actually might have just had your call drop anyway, so apologize for that if that was on my side. But John, thanks for calling in, buddy. It's always good to talk to you guys. John's pretty active out there, so you guys go make sure you check him out there on social medias. So, lots of people in the chat room chatting it up, talking about how the one person, JD813, says he loves how the hits in the AFL, or the AAF so far has way less penalties. It is beautiful. Yeah, we talked about that just a few minutes ago. So, all right. Where were we, Ren? Oh, overall thoughts on the game. I was asking you about that. What were kind of some of your overall thoughts on as you were watching the game?
It's about what I expected. Anybody's logo is as terrible as the Atlanta's Legends are. Like, they're not going to be able to do anything offensively or defensively. I mean, purple and gold I get. Like, color royalty, purple is, gold matches that. The crown, I get it, but it's a terrible logo. And they're not even really purple. They're like violet.
Ren, you know what I find absolutely hilarious about this? Because if you go back and listen to our last show, you spent like 20 minutes talking about uniforms. And here for a guy who's not a swag guy, for a guy who doesn't like all that kind of stuff, you spent a lot of time talking about this, my friend.
Hey, look, before these guys even touched the field, no one knew who these people were. So what's to talk about? You rate the uniforms, Who has the coolest helmet? Who has the coolest uniforms? Like, oh my, who are the head coaches? Besides that, there's a lot of guys you do know on these teams, but there's a lot more guys you don't know on these teams. So anyway, overall thoughts on the Violet Atlanta Legends is I'm going to sort of jump ahead here. Spurrier's fun and gun offense is going to murder this league. Once he gets a quarterback, it looks like he has probably the best quarterback in the league because I've watched all the games now. I've seen all the teams. And once he actually gets a sort of like top tier bottom feeding, okay, put it this way. If Ryan Griffin was on the Apollos, he's the MVP, like hands down.
Sure.
Because what it is about Spurrier's offense is getting guys in space, but what always hurt him was to be able to space the defense out, he would have to protect with 5 offensive linemen. And when he played the top tier teams, when he was at Florida, such as like the Florida State, Nebraska, they could bring the heat like 4 on 5, and his quarterback would get killed. He went to the NFL. His quarterback got killed. He didn't leave enough guys in to block. But you can only bring 5 in the Alliance.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yep.
So it's 5 on 5 at the most.
Yep.
Once he gets
there is a caveat to that, though.
I've heard there's a caveat. I haven't heard anything about it, though.
Yeah,
I like that. Like, for the most part, and then they don't really tell you what the reasons are when you can bring 1 to 5.
So it's very circumstantial, and it's going to be very judgmental call by the referee. But basically, the idea is, let's say they rush 5, but then let's say a safety is tracking with a running back and he's going in to grab a running back, but then turns out it's a fake and the running back does something else. Well, he's already like in there and kind of committed. So the natural move would be for him to turn around and rush the quarterback. Does that make sense? Like,
so if he goes across the line of scrimmage, if a defender goes across the line of scrimmage to pick up a man, like a receiver or running back,
Right. Yep.
and the ball's not thrown to them or they're not involved in the play, he can
Yeah.
turn and go ahead to the quarterback.
Right, and he doesn't count against that 5. Now, that's the
5.
way I understand it. That's the way I understand it. It's very convoluted, and like I said, it's very like, is that really what he was doing? Is that
Maybe that's what they're probably talking about because you hear a lot of these guys say, once the defensive coordinators start to get creative with this 5 thing, and that's what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Because what you could do is send 5, and as
Mhm.
soon as the back sort of runs out
Mhm.
to get a screen pass, you could send the 6th guy, but not have anybody cover the back,
Mhm.
and just
Right.
leave it to the cornerback who's not be like, well, the guy you had a screen pass on, that means I can send 6.
Right.
So,
Right.
and for what I've seen early on, it's going to be a problem. People talk about how there's a, sort of this epidemic of very good offensive line units in the NFL.
Mhm.
And from what I've seen in these games, this league ain't going to help them. I mean,
Yeah.
they're going to get better, obviously, but
Right.
man, there was some really bad offensive line play.
There was, and it was one of the guys that I was sitting with in the press box kind of brought up this point, and I thought it was really good. He said, think about the NFL. What are the position groups in the NFL that have a plethora of people? Go ahead. What are they?
Defensive line, linebackers, offensive line, wide
No,
receiver.
no. A plethora of like really good people. Like teams are just overflowing with people at these good positions.
Wide receiver and defensive line, linebackers.
I would say the linebackers and the wide receivers, right? So the players in this league are going to be guys that actually are really good. They just kind of got knocked off because there was other really good players.
Right.
Now the converse of that, what are the position groups in the NFL that have a lack of really good players across the entire league? Offensive line, cornerback, right? Those kinds of positions. Even you might even say quarterback a little bit.
Yeah.
That's going to be the positions that really aren't very good in this league because the best ones are still going to be in the NFL, and these are the guys that these guys weren't good enough to make a weak position group in the NFL.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think that's just going to be a nature of the beast when it comes to this league and how it goes. It's just the way it's set up. So
that's probably a reason the NFL is so happy about this. Be able to get offensive linemen 10 weeks of practice and live game reps. I mean, I might even if I was like a GM, I might be sending like Kappa and
they'd have to cut him. They'd have to cut him.
Yeah, see, I think that's going to change.
You think so? Well, see, I think the NFL would have to absorb them a little bit more.
Yeah,
that's
why I think everything's 3 years. Their contracts are 3 years with CBS NFL Network. All the players' contracts are 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I think in going after the second year, going to the third year, I think you're going to see some changes between the relationship of the alliance and the NFL.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter what kind of brand of football it is. It really doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
If people watch, that's a bonus.
Mm-hmm.
The NFL needs this. They
do, and I mean that's why you have the guy Charlie. I forget his last name. He's just known as Charlie. He's the guy who had the idea. He went and sat down with Bill Polian, pitched the idea to Bill Polian. Bill Polian loved the idea so much that he said, I want to be your partner on this. And this is how they drew in Hines Ward. And this is how they drew in Jeff Fisher. And this is how they've drawn in all these, big NFL guys because this is what the NFL needs. And you're absolutely right.
Yeah, they need it.
Yeah, they absolutely need it. As far as an overall thought for me, you guys heard me say on the last show when we were talking to Tom Alexander, the team reporter for the Apollos, I'm not much of a college football guy. And the reason for that is, and Ren, you can disown me and that's okay. The reason for that is because I watch college football and there's the superstars and those guys are great. But overall, I feel like I'm watching football through molasses. I feel like I'm watching it slow versus the NFL, which is fast, it's snappy, it's hard hitting. And what I felt like yesterday was this is not as good as the NFL. There's certainly a drop off. But I felt like it was better than college football. Like, I enjoyed it more than I did college football. So that was sort of my overall thought, like as a football guy, like watching football. For that. So, hey, real quick, just a reminder, anybody who wants to call in, that phone line is open, 864-729-BUCS. That's 864-729-2827. Call in, talk to us about the Orlando Apollos game. We would love to hear from you. Also, if you're listening to this on the podcast feed, shoot us an email. It's the same old email address you guys have always known, thepewtercast@gmail.com. We'll make sure we get that in on a future episode. Still figuring out exactly how that's going to work. All right, Ren, why don't we talk about some football? Let's just sort of go down through the list as we talk about this game.
Sure.
We'll start at the most important position, as we always do. We're starting to talk about
long snapper.
Yes, Drew Ferris, former Buccaneer. What'd you think?
Looked great.
He was out there twice.
Signed him right away.
Yeah.
Best long snapper I've seen. Since George Spaghetti Legs.
All right, no disagreement. Moving on, the second most important position on the field, the quarterback. Let's talk about that. Garrett Gilbert. We've already talked about him just a little bit. How'd you feel about Garrett Gilbert's play last night?
Well, it's only been one game, and like I said, I've watched all the games. Last night I got to be able to watch both games.
Mm-hmm.
And he seems to be at least he's one of the best, if not the best. Like I said, it's only one game.
Mm-hmm.
He probably has the most experience. I remember I kind of got cut off, I think, when John called. When they had their quarterback draft, the number one overall pick was Josh Johnson, who ended up going to the Redskins and now is still there. I think he won a couple of games for him late after Alex Smith, broke his ankle in half.
Right.
And Josh Johnson went in there and won a couple games, so he's still with the Redskins. So the other guys, Garrett is like you said, I almost called him Garrett Gilbert. And by no means did he have a perfect game, but it was a first game.
Mm-hmm.
It was a rainy game, and they said it a few times on the broadcast. Just being able to get through a full game without being pulled as a quarterback by Steve Spurrier, it's a small accomplishment.
Mm-hmm.
It really is. Like if you follow his career at Florida or at South Carolina, he likes to change quarterbacks. He's very demanding of the quarterback, but he has proven if you can get his system down, it's almost unstoppable. So I thought of all the quarterbacks that I watched this weekend, I thought he was the best. But like I said, it's only one game.
Yeah, I haven't gotten to watch the other games yet. I've got them all recorded. And you should be able to go back and watch them on the app. That's my understanding. I do know that the league is still trying to figure out some of that stuff. Apparently, they were having some problems with their app over the weekend. So, it's a new league. You got to give them a little bit of grace. But I haven't been able to watch the rest of them. Turns out it's my anniversary weekend with my wife, and she let me go off and do football things, and I had to pay the piper today. So, yeah, I thought he played great. The first quarter was a struggle. They had two possessions. They ended them both in punts. The first one went 3 and out. It went 0 for 3 as he stepped out. I mean, that's how the league started. This was the first game of the league that the league played. They went on first, and that's how the league started. 3 and out, 0 and 3. And they eventually settled in. They got through the end of the first quarter, and the score was 0 to 3. The Legends kicked a field goal, and then within like 4 minutes of the second quarter, the Apollos had 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
So not bad. And the rest of the game, they got. I mean, gosh, they won 40-6. Like,
yeah, the defense. It's sort of hard to go through position by position in this. I thought the running backs played fine. Akeem Hunt dropped a couple early ones. They weren't exactly perfect throws, but catchable balls.
Mm-hmm.
The offensive line had a terrible first quarter.
Yep.
Gilbert was being pressured constantly, but after that,
Mm-hmm.
he played really good. And once again, maybe I didn't pay really close attention to a lot of other offensive lines.
Mm-hmm.
Birmingham looks to be a pretty complete team, and the Hot Shots and the Stallions, they both actually scored a touchdown.
Whoa!
The only game where both teams scored a touchdown, at least. So that was a competitive game I was watching before I came on and did this. But the tight ends I didn't see much. I didn't really get a lot from the wide receivers, but when Tom Anderson came on and told us, or excuse me, Tom Alexander came on and told us about this defensive line and
Mm-hmm.
how the Apollo's offense is like, they're looking forward to this, mini camp or training camp to be over, so they don't have to face these guys anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You could see what he's talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before you get too far with that, Ren, let me back up. Let me back up just a little bit, because I did want to pick out just a couple of guys that really stood out to me
Sure.
in the wide receiver and in the running back groups. Wide receiver, of course, Jalen Marshall. I think Jalen Marshall is one of the guys that we could and probably would see him on an NFL roster in this next year, and that's based off one game. We'll see what he does as the season goes on, but that's kind of my way too early prediction with him. I think he's
Super
one of
Bowl
those.
MVP, Jalen Marshall.
Yes. He'll be going to Disney World next year. He
That
did.
here, Edelman.
Yeah. He had several tough catches, but he also had a few drops throughout the game. But he did have a touchdown. It was the first touchdown in Alliance football history. So, yay for him. But he just seemed like a pretty solid player. So he really stood out to me. And then the running back group, the entire running back group, I thought did fairly well. You did mention that Akeem Hunt had not Kareem Hunt, Akeem Hunt. He had a really rough first quarter. A lot of it was due to rain. It really was. He was slipping out there on the field. He couldn't catch his footing. He was dropping the balls. But once he settled in, I thought he had a pretty good game. But Davion Smith had the first rushing touchdown in Lions history as well. But really, the guy who stood out to me though was this kid, D'Ernest Johnson. Never heard of him before. He's one of those guys. You sit back and go, why would I have ever heard of this guy? But D'Ernest Johnson, man, he had several nice run plays that he averaged somewhere around 8 yards a game or 8 yards a carry. And he had several carries. Like, it wasn't like 2 carries. It was several. So those are two guys that really jumped out to me from the offensive line, that Jalen Marshall and D'Ernest Johnson.
Yeah, I've said it before. We talked about Spears and the fun and gun, and you get this impression that they throw the ball all the time and they score a lot of points quickly. Which that second part is true, but what Spurrier does, once he gets like 14 points ahead, 17, 20, 21 points ahead, he starts to run the ball.
Right.
And you see these big gashing run plays. I mean, I watched it at Florida for a decade. It's halfway through the second quarter and you're up 21-7, and then the next thing you know, the running back's got like 2 touchdowns on 16 carries and 84 yards. You're like, when did this happen? So. Yeah. It's that's what he does. He doesn't run the ball early, and he doesn't really run it late. He just he runs it. Once he gets a lead. If he doesn't have a lead, he ain't running it.
And just for the record, I did happen to look it up. D'Ernest Johnson was from USF, so maybe Tampa fans do know that guy. If you guys follow the Bulls at all, looks like he played right there at South Florida. Did his college ball there. So. Anyway, all right, Red, you were about to get into the defensive line. Before you do that, just a quick reminder for anybody out there who's listening. You watch the game, you want to call in, you can do that, 864-729-BUCS. It's 864-729-2827. Ren, you were talking about the defensive line, buddy.
Yeah, Tom Alexander, the Apollo's beat reporter or in-house reporter or club reporter, team reporter, however you'd like to put it. We had him on the previous show when we sort of introduced this Showtime with the Apollos pod. Mm-hmm. He was telling us about how the offensive line and the offense as a whole of the Apollos were looking for the end of training camp so they didn't have to go against these guys. And, I sort of took that, as, okay, whatever. Like, in my mind, I'm like, okay, Tom, sure. As I'm thinking, like, these offensive line, like, your offensive line might be terrible because, you know what? I've heard this from the Buccaneers before, as going to training camp. Oh, man, the defensive line is really tearing up the Bucs O-line. They're going to be so great. And then you get into the season, and it's not there, and you kind of realize that your offensive line just wasn't as good as you thought it was. And by in turn, like, your defensive line wasn't good as I thought it was. But the Apollo's defensive line came to play, and they don't even have Jarrell Worthy. The guy that was a Buccaneer, he won't be back for a couple of weeks.
He's on their version of IR. So
What's that?
he's on their version of IR.
Yeah.
Yep.
So he was a second-round pick from the Panthers, and I thought he was a great penetrator when we had him during the preseason, the first couple of games of the 2018 season here in Tampa Bay. I thought he had, he was kind of like a Gerald McCoy with not so much talent, but had the quick off the ball, can get into the backfield and sort of disrupt things. I thought their linebackers were athletic. Shocker. A team from Florida with a bunch of Florida college kids are going to have athletic linebackers that can run sideline to sideline. That's not a huge shock. And, they got a nice safety duo, a bunch of ex-Gators, and I know Will Hill's one of them. So I thought that only holding him to 6 points I thought was impressive until I watched the other games. And apparently, I mean, like San Antonio game, the San Diego Fleet didn't score a touchdown.
Right.
The Birmingham game, the Memphis Express didn't score at all. So, and
now,
the Orlando game, Atlanta didn't score a touchdown.
Right.
So 3 of the 8 teams didn't score a touchdown.
Now, let me ask you this: are you aware of sort of the drama surrounding the Atlanta Legends leading into this week of the game?
Oh, I don't know what the drama was. I didn't know it was drama, but I know that Michael Vick was the OC, and they let him go.
He stepped away.
All right, well, tell the story, man.
Yeah. So, the basic story is that they get to like this week, like it's game week, and the head coach for the Atlanta Legends, and I'm sorry, I don't remember the name off the top of my head. The head coach just quits. He's just gone. Yeah, bye. He leaves, and he was real close to Michael Vick.
Job somewhere?
I don't know. No idea what happened to him. I have no idea. He just quit, and he was real big friends with Michael Vick, and had kind of convinced Michael Vick. Now Michael Vick had some other personal stuff going on, but Mike did this. And yes, guys, if you're thinking, wait, like that Michael Vick, yes, that Michael Vick. He had like some family issues and some different things, but basically he has been wanting to get into coaching. He's been wanting to try his hand at coaching, and so this was his shot to do that. And he wound up leaving as well. So they lost both their head coach and their offensive coordinator within the week right before their very first game. So the guy who was their head coach, and I should have that name right in front of me, and I don't, got to talk to him in the press conference, but he was like their defensive coordinator like a week ago.
Okay.
And just now he's the head coach. The other guy, I'm not sure entirely what's going on. Jeff Fisher did address the Michael Vick situation, and basically everything's good with him. He's good with the league. They're going to move him over to more of a front office deal, working with Hines Ward in the player personnel side of things.
Player development.
Yeah. He's going to work more over there as opposed to in coaching. So they're just sort of reassigning him, but it really was more, they said with him, it was more just personal stuff. It was some personal issues, and when his friend left, like he just didn't have the whatever. They didn't go too much.
He didn't want to be there if his buddy wasn't there.
I think that's I think he also realized it was just too much given everything else he had going on. So, understand that's what the Atlanta Legends were dealing with as they walked in. And, everybody was very commending of the team. I was just saying, they lost their head coach, they lost their guy. They still just came into work and did what they needed to do. And, they only scored 6 points. But as you mentioned, so did several of the other teams in an 8-team league. So, but yeah, it's I would say this, and this may be more leaning towards a final thought, maybe a wrap-up thought, and we'll get there in a little bit. But, the Orlando Apollos went out. They were a dominating team. They did really, really well, 40-6 against a team that lost its head coach and its offensive coordinator in the week before the inaugural game. So, take it with a grain of salt. I still expect the Orlando Apollos to do really well. They are still ranked number 2 in the power rankings, at least going into this week. They were. They have a fantastic defensive line. They have a great quarterback. They have a great group of wide receivers. They have a lot to be looking forward to. San Antonio, though, the team they're playing next week, is going to be a much tougher challenge. So I'll be real interested to see what they do this coming week.
Do you know if that's a home or away game?
It is an away game, and it is 4 o'clock. What I don't know is if it's 4 o'clock San Antonio time or 4 o'clock our time. I'm not sure. If anyone out there, if you guys are in the chat room, or maybe I can look it up here in a minute, but if anyone wants to find out for me, do that, and I'll make sure I announce it here on the show. But it's a 4 o'clock game. I just don't know if it's Central Time or Eastern
Is it
Time.
Saturday or Sunday?
I want to say it's on Sunday. In fact, I know for sure it is on Sunday.
Sunday game.
Yep. So, yeah, defensive line. Now, linebackers. Let's talk about line. Well, okay, I'm sorry. Defensive line. Guy that really stood out to me on defensive line, and I like this guy a lot. Josh Banks Sr. And this is weird. You know, to kind of the preface of the show, like we don't know all these guys. Like these are the guys that sort of rose to the top for me that I now have my eye on. Right. But Josh Banks Sr. He's a he starts as a defensive end in the 4-3 or the 3-4 that they run there in Orlando, but he's versatile because he'll move inside, he'll move outside, he'll drop back. He's a pretty versatile player there on the defensive line. But he had just a ton of I think he had 2 sacks, had a couple of pressures. He was in Matt Sims, that's the quarterback for the Legends. He was in his face all game long, disrupting the backfield. Tons and tons of stuff. Big guy that jumped out to me off that defensive line as well. So I don't know if you have anything to add to that. Just throwing that out there.
I concur.
Yes, he did great. So now one of the funny things is I'm looking at his stat sheet. They actually the stat people did not record a live sack for the Orlando Apollos. I'm pretty sure they had like at least 2, maybe 3.
I hear
4.
You can't find a box score anywhere.
It's hard. It's hard.
Like, I think I saw on Twitter that, like, hey, we've teamed with the Alliance and we're going to do their depth charts and box scores now. It's like one of those things in New League where, you know, it's like, I equate it to, like, I used to work for this restaurant where it's been around so long. They had this one day a year, they had the special day where they roll back all the prices, and it's a very small limited menu to the prices when it opened, like in 1906.
Oh, yeah?
You know, so like pitchers of sangria are like $1. You know, like desserts a quarter. You know, a Cuban sandwich is like 50 cents. So people like will line up 2 hours before we open, and it is like 100 people sitting in the lobby from when you open to when you close, like 12 hours later. It's a crazy, crazy day.
Right.
But one of the things we used to serve was like a creme brulee, right?
Right.
Okay, so you got everything done. You got all this food. You got all the creme brulees. You got all the Cuban sandwiches. You got all the sangria and the chicken and yellow rice. You know, you got everything. Everything's set. You go to the creme brulee on 1905 day, and you light the torch, and no one bought butane. You know what I mean? Like there's like a quarter can of butane between the 2 torch guns. And I kind of feel that's what happened to the Alliance right here, where it's like, yeah, okay, everything's off and rolling. We got announcers, we got everything's here. People are like, oh yeah, great. Can I see the box score? And they're like, what? I'm sorry. Yeah, you guys got a depth chart? I'm sure the coaches do. I mean, we don't have one out you can see.
I have just so people know, I don't know if I'm allowed to put this out. I have everybody that went to the game got one of these. It's you'll recognize it. We see these at the Buccaneers games from time to time, but it's the roster card.
Yep.
And I'll put it right up here to the camera so people can see it. I mean, that's effectively their depth chart.
Yeah.
Right there. That's the offense, and then defense is right over here. So it is out there, and I mean, I have the box score.
Where'd you get it?
Well, with those nice little media credentials, they send that kind of stuff to you at the 2 o'clock in the morning after the game is over.
They emailed it to you?
Yeah.
You know what I found really?
So the Orlando Apollos officially had 3 sacks. My guy that I was just talking about, Josh Banks Sr., was recorded as having 1 of them. The other 2 going to Ryan Davis Sr., and the other one going to somebody whose name I just can't pronounce. Okine. I'm not sure who that is, but
Do you know the San Diego Fleet who
Earl. Okay.
played the Commanders who the Apollos are playing next week?
Uh-huh.
I don't even know how many sacks they gave up. I know they had 7 halfway through the third.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. It was. I was really looking forward to the Fleet with Mike Martz, the architect of the
Uh-huh.
greatest show on turf, and turn Marshall Falk into a Hall of Famer, and made Matt Forte when he went to Chicago and was the offensive coordinator there, turned Matt Forte into a fantasy stud for a handful of years there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, watch out! Here comes the Fleet, man! Like whoever their running back is, he's the MVP of the league. Count it, book it now. They can't keep their guy upright. I mean,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
he's got some work cut out for him there, but they got
Yeah.
cool uniforms.
There you go. Even those uniforms, man. All right, let's keep it moving here. Linebackers for the Apollos. The one who really jumped out to me there is a guy named Terrence Garvin, number 51.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we had a
absolutely.
pick 6, 2 interceptions.
Yeah.
Like 47 tackles.
Yep. Yeah. So
Where's he from? Where'd he go? Where'd he go to school?
Give me a second.
Or
You
is he an
talk
NFL
while
guy?
I look it up. Because I have it right here. What's his
The
number?
Memphis
51.
uniforms are.
He was
legit.
from West Virginia.
So he must have played for an NFL. He must have played for the Bucs or the Dolphins. or
Yeah,
the
they
Jags.
don't have listed on the roster card NFL team, former NFL team stuff,
Right.
but they do have their college, and he went to West Virginia. So that's where he's out of. But yeah, he's another one that I could see very much making an NFL roster here. Come this fall, just based on the one game that we saw. So the ones that really jump out to me that Garrett Gilbert, the quarterback, Jalen Marshall, the wide receiver, and then this guy Terrence Garvin. Although honestly, Josh Banks Sr. I think would be another guy that I could very easily see making a roster. So he was good. I'll tell you somebody who didn't show out to me that I really expected was Will Hill.
Yeah.
This was a name that we Tom Alexander had talked to us about, and it was in the back of my head, and I just never saw him. I'm not saying he didn't do anything. I'm just saying that I never saw him really in this game. So I look forward to maybe seeing that in a future game, seeing maybe what he can do.
Yeah,
He had 5 tackles. I know that 5 tackles, 2 assists.
Probably all in run support.
Probably 1 pass defended. So because I have the box score, it's right there.
That's a nice stat line. That's a nice stat line for a safety. 5 tackles and a PBU.
There you go. So, man, that's I mean, I don't know what else there is really to say about this game. It was a football game.
Well, we're learning the players,
We are, yeah.
You've mentioned some guys to keep an eye out. Like, hey, I'm excited about this guy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited about this back, the quarterback. I'm excited about this wide receiver.
Yeah.
You named a defensive lineman. You named, a linebacker. So these are guys you get to know. I mean, I really remember the conversation sort of being when the USFL first started.
Yeah.
Like, it's about those guys that just missed. The problem was they started to try to compete with the NFL when
Right.
they're, signing guys out of college. I mean, the USFL has, like, if you go look back at their rosters, they have Hall of Famers, like, kind of all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason is because they got them straight out of college. It wasn't, it was a competition.
Right.
So, I think this is going to be different. So if you're an old school USFL, sort of enthusiast, and you're like, man, I remember all these players, and then when they folded, a lot of them, jumped straight to the league and became Hall of Famers and all pros, won Super Bowls. This isn't quite the same thing, because all these guys in this league this year are guys that are like 51, 52, 53 on a roster.
Right.
And a lot of them have already had their shot and had their cup of coffee. They just need more reps to be able to become the sort of like 40, 41, 42, 43 guys on your roster.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. All right, Ren. Well, we're bumping up against our hour here for the InstantCast, so I'll go ahead and kind of toss it to you. Any kind of final thoughts you want to give us about the game as we head out of here tonight?
Final thought, I think it's going to be interesting to see if they start to attract quarterbacks that just kind of still want to play. You
Mm.
know, like I would find it interesting if like Mark Sanchez wants to come back
Right.
and just kind of chuck the ball around a yard, maybe win a
Mhm.
championship or two. But doesn't really have any real plans of trying to make it back to the NFL. If they call him up, okay, fine. But I know he knows, and I'm saying it like I'm him. I know that I'm not really going to stick anywhere in the NFL for a long period of time.
Mm-hmm.
Because when Spurrier coached the Tampa Bay Bandits, his quarterback was older than he was.
Right.
His name was John Reeves. Like Spurrier was like 34 and he was like 36. So
Yeah.
if it starts to get to that point where you have these guys that just want to continue playing football at the quarterback position, it could really elevate the whole league. But
see,
again,
if they do that though, that kind of goes against their
exactly
purpose for being.
Are they going to let people do
right?
that?
Like, I mean, if you're just about winning the championship, which is what they're about in the NFL, go out, win the championship. That's all that you're aiming to do. That's not what the alliance is trying to do. They're also helping get these guys back in the field. And they've got a championship. You want to go win the championship. That's the goal that you have as a team that you're moving towards. But I mean, what we're not going to see is they're not going to be trading these players. They're not going to be moving them around and shuffling them around and things like that. And if the NFL comes and plucks a guy, then it's kind of like minor league ball. Oh, you just lost a guy, next man up.
Right, but after this sort of newness wears off, and we'll just say like after this first season, the second season, owners are going to want to start winning.
Sure.
Now
here's the thing. I don't know that these teams have owners.
That's a great question.
I don't think they have owners. I think they're all like sort of owned by the league,
by the alliance.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? I think you're right because I've never heard that. I just assumed that was dumb.
Now they have like team presidents. They have team managers. They have those guys, and those guys are going to want to win. But it's not their ownership, right?
Yeah,
it's not it's not like that with the like it is in the NFL.
So. Would they let somebody like a Mark Sanchez come in and play?
That's a great question. That's a great question.
Or what about, let's say, something happens like what happened with Ray Rice.
Yeah.
All right. And they kick him out of the league for a year.
Mm-hmm.
Or something like Josh Gordon.
Right.
Where he was suspended for a whole year. Can he go play for the Alliance?
Well, what about Kareem Hunt? Well, I mean, it's...
Well, he's only going to be 6 games.
Yeah, he's going to be suspended. Yeah.
And the seasons aren't going to align. I thought of that, too. I'm like, well, no. So you have to be sort of like miss a whole season.
Right.
But,
I mean, but look at like a Le'Veon Bell who sat out his entire last season. Right? Now, Le'Veon Bell did that because he didn't want to get injured and risk his payday coming up. But you look at a Kareem Hunt.
I mean, like somebody like Josh Gordon.
Or Josh Gordon, yeah.
Or
Jameis Winston, who's going to get suspended. But he's not going to risk getting injured.
It's got to be a whole year.
Yeah. You're right.
It's got to be a whole year. It can't be. Oh, you got suspended for 3 games. Oh, just go play over here. Well,
right.
1, you're going to get hurt. It'd be stupid. 2, the season's not going on.
Right. Because I mean, I remember living in Lexington, Kentucky, and they had the single A affiliate of one of those major league teams. It's currently the Royals. I forget who it was before then, but it was whoever it was before then. Big guy, big Wade Phillips? No. Wade Boggs.
Yeah.
Wade Boggs came back to play, and he played 3 games in the single A, and then he went up to the double, so you have Roger Clemens, like Roger Clemens came and played for a game. Like it was weird. Like you'd get these super huge star names that you're like, I thought he was retired.
Oh, no. Well,
but they're trying to bring him back in or something.
No, they're rehab assignments.
Okay. Well, whatever it was, that's what we're probably not seeing here in the AFL. It's not they're going to come in and be on the team for a week or 2 and then move on. Like, they do need to build a cohesive unit.
Serious. Like if you end up on, what do they call it? The commissioner's non-exempt can't play list, whatever the hell they call that thing.
Right.
You've been blackballed. You got the black dot from the commissioner, the black spot. So I wonder if they'll let those people in there,
That's a good question.
Or somebody like, oh, I don't know, we'll say like a receiver that's been around for 20 years, holds a bunch of records, but still thinks he can play, and he's going to show everybody by putting tape out
Yeah.
right before the draft of that next season and play in the Alliance.
Or what about like you have a guy who's on the downswing, like an Adrian Peterson?
That's what I mean. That's
Who
what I
might
mean.
go- like maybe he's even a free agent, and he just wants to go impress somebody before all that stuff. hits.
and put some tape out.
Yeah, just to prove he can do it. But I mean, that's at that point, that's not about the. I mean, it is actually
That's
exactly
what I mean.
about
So
the player.
they're going to have to make these decisions.
Yeah,
Like they are, because
yeah,
look, the football wasn't great, okay, but it was organized, it was competitive,
Mhm.
and it wasn't a joke. And once again, the NFL needs this farm system. They need it very badly.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's going anywhere. So if you're a guy, we'll just say Adrian Peterson, he's a free agent, and he's not getting any nibbles whatsoever. And because you're gonna get that kind of guy. Like, this is something Terrell Owens would do. I'll go show you guys. Nobody wants me. Watch me go tear up this this Alliance League. Like I could,
Right.
like it's just something. But I don't know if they're gonna allow that.
yeah.
It's
It's a good question, because it kind of starts to contradict the stated purpose of what the Alliance is for. Hey, real quick, I just an update. Lee over in the chat room informs us that next week's game will be played at 4:00 Eastern Standard Time. So that is a report from our YouTube chat room. Thank you, Lee, for going out to do that. We did have a question. I think this is good. This will be an interesting one to address.
Oh crap! I had one too.
Uh-oh.
Go ahead. Listen.
Matthew over in the chat room says, how is the Alliance going to fill the stands? I feel like the ticket prices were a little too high to encourage new fans to get butts in the seats. $65 for premium seats and $20 for nosebleeds. Fair question. I think it's important if you're looking at yesterday's game, and I don't know what today's games or other games around the league have looked like, but yesterday specifically, you had rain. Now, they still had something like 20,000 people show up to the game.
Yeah.
Like, that's not a bad turnout. Now, in a stadium that seats 60,000 people, you're only talking about a third of it being filled, so it feels empty. But 20,000 people to come in for a game like this isn't
It's a sold-out
horrible.
basketball game.
There you go.
It's a sold-out hockey arena.
There you go.
Really close.
So, you look at stuff like that, but they're playing in mostly college stadiums, which are going to be just as big, if not bigger, than NFL stadiums. But, is the price point still off? Now, I will say this. The discount that you get if you buy multi-game packages, and it's only 5, if you do season tickets, it's only 5 games. The discount you get is pretty good. So, yeah, I don't know that $20 minimum for a ticket seems probably about right to me. I did see some tickets going for as much as $190 a ticket, and those are like super club suite tickets and stuff like that. But
Right. It's probably only going to be that high because it's the first ever game.
Now, I did talk to some of the fans who are in the stands, and I got to, so being in the press box, here's what I never realized. Okay, this is me being the fan who's getting to do this for the first time. You're very disconnected in the press box from the fan experience. Like you're up there, you're working, you're doing your thing. All the stuff that's happening in stadium, you're just disconnected from. Like it's you in the football field, and that's about it. I did get to talk to some of the fans and just kind of see how the night was from their perspective. But one of the things that somebody told me was that they had bought the $20 nosebleed tickets, and somebody came up and said, like, they wanted to bring people down, like, for the TV.
Yeah.
They went and got them and said, hey, you want to come down? And they just brought people down.
Yeah,
so
come sit in the lower bowl.
Right. So, they're going I would say get you the nosebleed tickets and let them give you the free upgrade. But I think the other thing is it's going to have to be, they're going to have to produce good football. If the Apollos keep winning, they can market it the right way. Fans get on board. That's part of why we're doing this podcast here, Ren, to try to get people excited about good football. That'll drive people to the stadium.
Yeah, and honestly, they're not really worried about it.
They're not.
I mean, they're not. I mean, the amount of money they're making from ticket sales it's not going to make or break the league. I mean, it's like I said,
like
it's
the
nice.
NFL, right?
I mean, it's nice, and it'd be cool to see, lots of people there and be able to jump up and down and actually make the bounce house shake at an Apollo's game. Like, I get that, but it's not the reason this league's here.
Right.
It's not, and
Right.
and it's not the reason the league's going to go away either.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like the person who asked the question is kind of looking for a baseball ticket. Like you can go to a baseball game and find like a nosebleed in the outfield for like $5, $7, $8.
Can you really?
Yeah, you
Really?
you can find it for $3. Rays game tickets for $3.
No, seriously?
Yeah.
Holy crap! I didn't know that. I did not know that.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, we've kind of trailed off here. So, Ren, why don't we go ahead and
I got
wrap
this
this
last
up?
question.
Oh, okay, fantastic.
Yeah. Pete Ukulele Punk, the guy in Germany.
Yeah, he's all over Twitter, man. He's been loving this show.
He's been very excited.
Yeah, very, very excited.
He sent me this, and because he said it's 4 a.m. He lives in Germany, obviously, and it's 4 a.m., so he can't stay up for the InstantCast. But this was his question: how do you think the NFL poaching the best players from the AAF teams would affect this year to your outlook of an individual team? As an example, the best teams will most likely lose their best players to the NFL.
Yeah.
Teams after the season, will this make repeating championship seasons impossible or much harder than if you built a roster that lasted 3 years with minimal player turnover? You guys rule, and hashtag take game.
Yeah, so just to reiterate that, his point being, how do you build a cohesive team when every year you're gonna have that turnover? If the NFL can pluck their guys. Well, the two things that I would say to that is, and we'll use Garrett Gilbert as an example. If they get plucked up to first of all, the NFL does not happen during the Alliance season. So
Right.
so that's helpful. You're not pulling them out of the Alliance season to go play in the NFL. So you have these guys can play the full Alliance season unless the guys in the NFL want to protect a guy from injury, which is possible. Probably not likely because you accept that as a risk when you play ball. But what we could see is you have the Apollos that go through their season. In the offseason, several of them will get signed. Several of them will go to a NFL team. And then at the end of the season, or maybe they get cut, they will come back to the Apollos, which is what happened with Garrett. Is he was with us. He went up to the Panthers, played a game there. He got cut at the end of the season, and now he's back with the Apollos. So I think you're going to see that back and forth a little bit. But when there are players that go away, I think that's just a part of the nature of this league. Is there could be a guy who just isn't there one day because he got called up by the NFL, or he's not going to be there the next year because he got called up by the NFL. And here's the next guy that we bring in. And yeah, that's going to be hard. But I mean, isn't that kind of the way college works, Ren? You get a guy who goes off into the draft. And, all right, well, he's off our team. So now we got to restock and reload.
Yes, it is kind of how that works.
Yeah, I think that's what it's going to be like.
A couple things here. One, I think Pete's overestimating how good he thinks these players are. He's kind of like equating it to like an Alabama or a Clemson, where you're like, oh wow, they have all these good players, they win the national championship, and they get plucked to NFL, or or a team that, okay, we'll say the Apollos win the championship, the Alliance championship, they have a really good team. That must mean like 6 or 7 guys are going to make NFL teams. Now, when we talked about earlier how the Alliance thinks they'll have 40-50% players in the league, I'm sure they mean in training camp.
Right.
Not making teams.
Right.
There's probably I think I'd be safe to put the over-under on players that actually make week 1 53-man rosters next year on an NFL football team. I think I could say 7.
You think 7 players across the entire league make a 53-man roster? Is that what you're saying?
I think that's a good place to do an over-under.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Uh-huh.
So of all those 7,
so of the 400 or 500 players that are in the Alliance League,
right?
You think 7 of them might make a 53-man roster come next year?
Okay.
Week
1.
Fair enough.
Yeah, week 1. That's where I think it's at. Now, as you develop, especially like the weaker positions, like you get 3 years. Say you come out of college, you're 22, 23 years old. You get picked up by the Orlando Apollos, and you play left tackle for them for 3 years. That's a different story. But this year is year one, and all these offensive linemen have already been looked at by the NFL. And trust me, if you could block, you'd be on an NFL team. So you got to give these guys some years to develop. That doesn't cost basically an NFL franchise any money. As we go forward, I think those numbers will change. But I think 7's a good number to put it at. And then you have to think, so all those players are going to come off one team? I don't think so. I don't think there's going to be as much turnover because the NFL is as you think. I think there's going to be a lot more turnover because, especially early, I think the league's going to try to get younger and younger. You know, like a player like Sterling Moore, who's had like 7-8 years, you know, kind of scrapping around, bouncing around the league. I think that the league itself would rather replace him with someone younger, you know, someone who's coming out this year's draft, doesn't get drafted, has a cup of coffee with someone. They'd rather have his starting at cornerback for the hot shots than a guy that's had his shot with, like, you know, a handful of teams. So that's the way I think the league thinks it's going to be. So I would say that the turnover on teams is going to be more about people coming to the team than people being taken away from the team.
Fair enough. I like it. All right, Ren. Well, that's going to wrap it up for this show. Let's go ahead and put a button on this
time.
one.
Let's wrap this up.
We have more exits than the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Oh, God, that last one, right?
Yeah. Oh, my gosh.
I actually stood up at one point. When I saw the last one in the theater, one point I actually stood up. And then and I was mad. Like, it came back on. I'm like, oh, my God. Like, I really.
Movie's
Peter
over.
Jackson.
Let's go.
I got to go, Peter Jackson.
Right. Like, literally, he had to pee. Anyway, with that, Ren, we will be back. We're still figuring out how this show, Showtime with the Apollos, is going to work. So who knows? You guys stay tuned to the PewterCast feed. This will be right here in your podcast feed. You'll see it in the title. It's Showtime with the Apollos, so you know that's what the episode's about.
I think we're gonna have another show fairly quickly.
I think we will. I think it'll probably be 2 shows a week would be my guess for how this is going to work. So if you guys had some thoughts, you guys are listening to the podcast, and you're like, man, I didn't get to call in. You want to send in your thoughts on the game, shoot them to us at the PewterCast at gmail.com. We would love to take that. And you can also follow us on Twitter at the PewterCast or on Facebook.com/the PewterCast. Ren, why don't you tell the folks out there where they can get a hold of you on the internet?
Best place to find me is on Twitter, cuz Facebook is dead. At Rendax, REN_DAXT. I'm always down to talk Buccaneers or, for the next 11 weeks, Apollos football.
Ren's making a prediction. They're going all the way. They go into the ship. You
got to stop that.
And if you guys want to get in touch with me, you can find me at Brent Allen Live on Twitter and on Instagram. Would love to connect with you there. And once again, the show is at the PewterCast on Facebook and on Twitter, and email us to thepewtercast@gmail.com. Thanks to everybody who joined us live tonight on YouTube and over in Mixler. Thank you to all of the patrons. You can find out more about how you can support the show at patreon.com. And until then, guys, we'll talk to you guys next time, and we'll close the show out as always. Go Bucs and Apollos.
I think we should say take aim.
We'll close the show out as always. Take aim.
They can't see you doing that.
The YouTube people can.